Well, good evening. Welcome to our Tuesday, May the 14th, City Council meeting. I now call this meeting to order. Our Pledge of Allegiance and invocation, if she so desires, will be given by Councilwoman Dotley.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we come before you today to thank you for the opportunity to serve your people. We pray that this meeting is done decently and in order, that we do what's best for the city of Chattanooga. God, we love you and thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. We have no special presentations this afternoon. Could I have a motion on the minutes? We have a motion on the minutes and a proper second with no objections. Minutes will stand as recorded. We will move into our discussion of agenda at this time. Looking at this week's agenda, is there anything on this week's agenda that needs to be brought to the chair's attention at this time? Councilwoman Dotley.
Yes, just one item, planning item H. Just want to make sure that the alternate version is read.
Okay.
That's it.
Madam Clerk, will you make sure that when we go to this, our order of business, that is the version that's read, the alternate version. And while we're at that junction, item C, under planning, I do want that alternate version read as well. We do have an alternate version for item C. And I am in favor of that rezoning with the alternate version conditions. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have deferred from several weeks back a budget amendment. And in order to do the budget amendment, by law, we have to have a public hearing.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a public hearing that's not the budget public hearing. This is on this one ordinance amendment. The law doesn't require us to have it at any certain time. And I was going to do it as part of my committee. Is this okay, or should we do it a different way? I understand the city attorney had a concern about that.
Mr. Attorney, is there any reason we couldn't do it during our committee meeting that we're going to have a little bit later here in the afternoon? No, it won't be after the recess. It'll be before the recess, but.
As long as it gives an opportunity for people to know, and our notice at least scheduled that the meeting would start at 3:30 today on there, so the notice would have been adequate at that point in time.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
yes, ma'am.
Then
So-
I'd like to go ahead as planned.
Okay, so
Thank
we'll
you.
have that we'll have that public hearing during our committee report.
Thank you.
All right? Councilwoman Knoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item I under planning. There is some conditions set on there, but I was waiting for a return call from Mr. Ken Smith, the president of the Avondale Neighborhood Association but have not heard back from him yet. So,
Okay.
but conditions for sure.
Do you have those conditions?
I think, Karen, I think the conditions are,
There is a condition on the ordinance. It is single unit detached dwellings only. Townhouses, multi-unit up to 4 units, and 0 lot line residential uses are prohibited. Because they're allowed in the zone, the recommendation is to prohibit those and allow only single unit detached dwellings only, and that is in the condition.
okay, and how many is it one or
They're proposing 2.
Two, okay.
And 1 on each of the street frontages.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's what I want to make
Now,
sure.
let me ask a question. Are those conditions that's currently in the ordinance as
They
it's
are.
presented?
They are.
Okay, so you won't need an amendment?
I want to make sure that it
Okay.
was covered in it.
Oh,
Okay,
all right, great.
all right, thank you.
Councilman Hester.
Item F, what is it?
Under planning,
Planning?
I'm going to defer that for a week, have adequate amount of time to talk with the folks that trying to get this zoning changed.
Okay.
So I need a week, please.
You just make that motion. All right. Any other concerns or questions about this week's agenda? If not, we'll move into next week's proposed agenda. Which we will have several planning items under final reading. We have one item under planning and a few items under economic development and resolutions. Any questions or comments concerning next week's proposed agenda? I will point out that, and council, if you will take note, under fire and community health, because we're not meeting on the 28th, I gave some special permission to get these items on the agenda since we're not meeting on the 28th, so that they don't have to wait till the 4th. Just make sure you're aware of those items, since we did add those by special permission. All right. Purchasing questions for this afternoon. Any questions in purchasing? All right, not seeing any lights. Looking at your future considerations. Questions or comments under future considerations? All right, very well. Not seeing any lights at this time, we will turn the chair over to Councilman Hester for Parks and Public Works.
Welcome to Parks and Public Works. Can we accept the minutes? Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have Resolution 9. Can you read D, please?
A resolution authorizing the City of Chattanooga to apply for and, if awarded, to accept the Land and Water Conservation Fund, LWCF grant for the acquisition of 14.6 acres for the future Rowling Spring Park in an amount of $800,000, and if awarded, accept the grant with the City of Chattanooga matching amount not to exceed $800,000 for a total amount not to exceed $1,600,000.
Councilman Leffler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This, I believe, should have a District 4 next to it, which is super exciting. Scott, are we in the house? Yeah, you want to come on up? Noel's not here, is he?
David Johnson is.
David, oh, there he is. Hey, David. So we'll have a little bit of fun here because I am tickled. Scott, remind me how many parks District 4, one of the most dense and fastest growing areas of our city, has?
One of the densest and fastest growing districts in the state of Tennessee has one park, sir.
Has one park. And how many rec centers do we have?
I believe I learned this morning you don't have any rec centers outside of Heritage, which is an art and cultural center as well. So you have a twofer instead of just one.
Right, and we are not getting any HVAC system there. So, all right, so we learned that this morning, having a little fun. So this is really exciting, ladies and gentlemen, because Resolution 22374, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Chattanooga, authorize the purchase of approximately 21 acres, more or less, tax map numbers, City of Chattanooga, from George K. Henshaw, Faith B. Henshaw, be used as a park for an amount not to exceed $730,000 for approximately 21 acres. This was adopted in January 4th of the year 2000. Mayor Kelly has committed to the well-being of our parks, the well-being of our population here and residents of Chattanooga, and he has not let down under the POPS program. And Scott, you have not let down under our POPS program that this body has adopted, fulfilling that promise. This is a huge deal for a very dense part of our district to have the opportunity to purchase roughly 15.6 acres. Is that right?
That is the hope. This is an active negotiation, and the application here is in the event we're able to reach a successful agreement and
Right.
the deadline we had to get in. But yes, sir. And frankly, I was surprised when I took the position here that we had not set up a land acquisition program to work in a city that's growing as fast as ours. I'm very excited this is a chance to begin that work. And the best time to begin was probably yesterday. The second best time was today, and glad to work on this today.
So, and this is in public partnership, or a partnership with Trust for Public Land. David, thank you for what you all are doing. Amazing work around our entire area. We could have no better partner than Trust for Public Land, I will say. This is just really exciting because as in this role in planning and zoning for, I guess, 7 years now, we are not going to have any more opportunities, Scott. I'm just going to, I know this. We are not going to have any more opportunities to buy land that will not be basically carved up into neighborhoods and high-density housing. And that's okay. We need housing. But we are not, as a city, going to ever have this opportunity again. So thank you, I want to say, for the work. And I highly encourage the city council to stand with me. And you might say in the midst of budgets, Dr. Burrs, this might be a question you might ask for a budget concern. We're not committing these funds, obviously, out of this budget. Correct. This is a multi-year commitment, so we have obviously time to plan for this money because obviously we're working within a flat budget. We've been in budget session all morning, so we're very attuned to the situation that we're working with. So I just want to say thank you to the mayor, thank you, Scott. Thanks for Trust for Public Land. There's a family involved that is committed as well and helping us work through it. It's still fluid.
Still fluid.
And we're still working out a lot of kinks.
Yes, we are.
You know, Scott and I are talking constantly about this. We're talking on Saturday mornings and whatever it takes to hopefully see this to fruition. So anything you want to add?
I think that's appropriate, sir.
Didn't mean to steal any of your thunder,
Oh,
but
good.
I am just stoked to have the opportunity to be able to change my narrative and to have possibly the opportunity to have 2 parks in District 4. So thank you.
That's good news. You good, Councilman?
Oh, I think I've said enough.
That's what Scott says. Bring good news. Thank you, Scott. Madam Clerk, Public Works E, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to authorize change order number 1 for J. Brennan Construction LLC of Dalton, Georgia for the Frost Stadium Concession Stand Ventilation Project, contract number R22015202 in the amount of $33,660.67 with a contingency in the amount of $10,000 for a total amount of $660.67.
Thank you. See no hands. F, please.
A resolution authorizing payment to Hamilton County GIS relative to addressing services for fiscal year 2024, according to the addressing memorandum of understanding between the City of Chattanooga and Hamilton County dated May 19th, 2006, and the amount of $68,348.
I think that concludes Parks and Public Works Committee. I want to thank again Scott Martin for what you do and the folks that work with you, Ross and all the folks at Public Works. Thank you again. Thanks. Next we'll have budget. Dr. Burns.
Thank you. Call to order Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Can I have approval of? Thank you so much. No opposition. Vicki, you or Javid, who's doing the ordinance?
Yes, I will.
All right. So as I said earlier, we have an ordinance to amend the budget, which the clerk will read now. If you would, please, ma'am.
An ordinance to amend ordinance number 13991, also known as the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 operations budget for the city of Chattanooga to transfer the fiscal year 2024 net surplus funds for the sale of the city of Chattanooga delinquent tax parcels in the Hamilton County surplus property sale to the Chattanooga Land Bank Authority.
Thank you. And Vicki, if you would fully explain that, and then by law, we have to have a public hearing, a time for folks to comment. And so let's let them comment with a full explanation.
Okay. The explanation is every year when we have a sale of the surplus property, the city receives a check. The check covers the treasurer's cost, the delinquent attorney's cost, and is to cover our cost for property tax that is owed, stormwater fees that are owed. Let's see, I wasn't prepared for this one. And liens on the property. So the Economic Development Department had asked if there was a way for them to receive that revenue, and we said that makes a lot of sense after we cover the city's costs. So this is just the net proceeds after everything that is owed to the city is subtracted, then it's be able to give it to the land bank to use.
Thank you. So given that explanation, according to law, we have to open the floor for any public comment, public hearing. Is there anyone that wants to make a comment about the amendment? Yes, ma'am. And your name and district, even though I know you well.
Janice Gooden, District 8, also representing Caleb. We've studied the Housing Action Plan, and this is one of the initiatives spelled out to grow and expand the Land Bank Authority and create additional housing options. So we would be in support of this.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gooden. Are there any other comments, concerns, anything else before we close the comment period?
Need to establish that the notice of this public hearing was 10 days in the paper before the meeting.
The attorney has just told me, in case you were unaware, we did give notice 10 days before the meeting. Okay. For all of you that were reading public notices about budget. But yeah, we followed all the rules. Anybody else want to make a comment? Thank you so much. Then I'll close the hearing and turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Next on our agenda is the Social and Economic Equity Study that was done by Dr. Malden. And so we're going to ask you to come at this time and just give an overview of the summary report that we've received, and then see if we have any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, excuse me, members of the council. I do want to start by apologizing. First of all, I was supposed to be here a month ago, but I was sick that Tuesday, so charge it to my head and not my heart. So I do want to start with saying when we started on what I'll consider to be a journey now, because we definitely had some humps in the road with the graduate assistant disappearing and all kinds of things. But when we started this, there was some talk about what the general focus would be, and so we broadened this idea of equity to not only include race but socioeconomic status, gender, and also geographic location is one of the things that comes up. And when I met with you before to talk about the study, one of the things that resonated was, okay, we already know these inequities exist. So what do we do about it? And so as we were kind of going through this process of conducting this study, there were a few things that popped up. And the first thing I want to say is that in terms of what do we do about them, the good news is that the city is already doing a lot of these things. And if there was some bad news behind it, it's just a matter of coordinating these things and placing them in some type of equity framework. And from that perspective is what I want to talk to you about today, if I can. And so I've had some conversations with Mr. Tony Salmons, who is kind of spearheading some of these issues in terms of equity across the city. And so one of the things that we kind of talked about is the development of some different types of things in which we're going to measure, how we would assess and measure equity. And I'll get into some of those things here shortly. So when we started, we were looking at equity across 6 different areas, which include education, economic opportunity, housing, health, food security, and criminal justice equity. I did not bring all of the data, and all of the data is not included in your summary report because it would make for a very extensive summary report. And so to kind of get to the point, yes, inequities exist across all of these areas. In education, in housing, in economic opportunity, food security, and the like. So what do we do about them? And if I may take a liberty, I want to skip to the recommendations first, if we want to call them that. All right. So in terms of developing an economic or an equity toolkit, as I mentioned, a lot of the things are already there, but how do we go about coordinating these things? And so the first thing that I think is important, and this is going off of some things that other cities that we looked at have done, is number one, collecting the relevant data. And not only collecting and reporting this data, but actually analyzing it and including it in a decision-making framework. With that, we want to be able to, which is the second part of the toolkit, is to include a diverse set of or make it a little bit easier for people to participate in the policy process. And we'll talk about some strategies there. Third thing is the actual policy strategies that are going to be based on some type of best practice or some type of innovative strategy that are being employed in other places. And so going to this first kind of recommendation, adopting and evaluating social equity measures. The city already collects a lot of these things, and one of the departments that has been good at this is CPD. There have been some measures in terms of arrests and how we deal with use of force and things like that. But I think we can apply these same types of measures across a broad swath of departments. And this becomes important because now it allows us to develop a baseline for what equity means across the city as a whole, across these areas that we looked at in the study, but also in other areas. And so I heard the presentation about parks and how a district only has a single park in the community center, all right? How equitable is that, right? And so we have to think about these things, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. The good news with data collection is that the Office of Performance Management and Open Data already collects a lot of this. And again, it's just a matter of how do we bring all of this to bear within the current system. And again, it's not good enough for us to collect data, but how do we use it? How do we analyze those things? In terms of the second piece of the toolkit, how do we go about engaging diverse individuals and groups? One of the things that we heard in just talking to different groups early on is that, yes, people come out, they survey us, they talk to us about different things, but then what happens? Right? What happens with the information that we give to the city council or anybody else within city government? And they feel like, yes, I have an opportunity to provide this voice, but am I really being heard? And so what I'm recommending, what our team is recommending is that and this is just one way to do this, all right? If we go to the city council website right now, go on the website, it talks about the meetings, it talks about live streams, it talks about YouTube videos, but how do we go about communicating with the council as a whole? We go about communicating the council as a whole either by contacting our individual representatives or by contacting the city clerk or the council clerk. And so what we're suggesting is open that up a little bit, all right? It's almost like the old school suggestion box type of system, where if there's a policy issue that is coming up, if there's something that is pressing to the council, then people can provide that feedback just as one way of feedback there, all right? And what this allows people to do is that people who can't attend a meeting or who don't necessarily have access to the internet or who can't participate in other ways, it gives them an opportunity to do these things, not only from home, but from different places. And so that's one thing. And I believe that allowing people to participate in this way, number one, it opens up that information so people can actually see it. And number two, it gives you I guess, more information by which you can make decisions. Policy decisions, that is. Excuse me. And then the third piece of this is the policy strategies. What do we do about these types of issues? And that's where the fun begins, right? We try to focus on these evidence-based innovative practices. And so what you'll find in, I believe it's in Appendix B, or maybe not. No, it's in table 2, I believe. There are some equity-related policy strategies that we kind of came up with. And I just want to share with you just as an example of how these things could possibly work. I guess I had this presentation, I could use it, right? But just as an example, I want to focus on the first measure that you see in front of you, which is the percentage of people 16 and 19 years old, neither in school nor working. And why is this a measure of equity? Is because when we start to look at the data, especially looking at it on a granular level, at the census block group level, that's when we began to see some of the issues that exist in terms of that particular population. Now, when we talk about education, now, and I'm speaking as a parent because I have a 16-year-old who I can shake sometimes, but one of the things that in thinking about like what types of things should he be engaged in over the summer in terms of academic enrichment, there's very little things out there for teenagers, for high school age students. There's the K-5 stuff, there's the middle school type of programs, but nothing really exists for that particular population. What I want to kind of hone in on is when we look at this data in Chattanooga, when we look at the percentage of people 16 and 19 years old, neither working or in school, means that they're just out there doing something, all right? What is this related to? It's related to the propensity for crime, it's related to unemployment, joblessness, all of these types of things. And so some type of policy intervention could be put into place that deals with that particular segment of the population. What I want to show you is, it also gives an example of how we started to assess equity in this. If you look at the box in the center of the map, it shows the average percentage for Chattanooga. So on average, about 5.62% of people aged 16 and 19 are neither in school nor in workforce. When we start to look at the darker shaded areas, that's when we start to see these issues. So the ranges in this average go from 0 up to 50%. So imagine a block group, right, where 50% of 16 and 19-year-olds are not employed, nor are they in school. And so we start to think about how to address those things, both the academic side of it, but how to ensure that they become productive, not only productive citizens, but also gainfully employed so that they can contribute to the economy in different ways. And so that's just one example of how we use the data. So as I mentioned, in this policy toolkit, we want to adopt measures and adopt and evaluate social equity measures, engage different groups, different communities in the policymaking process, and also implement some of these strategies. In that report, you'll see just some sample measures, and I also shared these or talked about these with Mr. Sammons. And again, these are things that the city is actually or has access to and can collect. It's just a matter of how do we bring these things under a larger equity umbrella so that we can start to assess and measure equity over time to see what that progress looks like. And so there are measures for housing, education, health, food security, and criminal justice and public safety. These are all things that we pulled from things that other cities are doing with the hopes that we can apply these things in Chattanooga to demonstrate not only a willingness to address equity, but how do we make that meaningful change? And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
All right. Any questions for Dr. Malden at this time? Councilwoman Dolly.
Yeah, so thank you for coming, Dr. Malden. We
Yes, ma'am.
appreciate you being here. So I had a question about, I think back to some of our original reasoning for wanting to have this study, was actually the framework. So of course, we're a legislative body. So for instance, we're looking at budget
Yes.
right now. So what would be, or any other legislation comes up, for instance, let's say we're talking about, beer and record board, or we're bringing up a towing increase or something to that effect, how does that apply to the legislative work that we're doing? Like, how do we apply this toolkit to the legislative work? What is the, I guess, checkbox for each area
Yeah.
in regards to the work that we're doing?
Okay, so with that, and I do recall that conversation. And so, like, how do we, I guess a broader way to think about it is how do you think about equity across those different things, right? One, it would depend on, and you picked a hard one in terms of the beer board. But what you have to think about is who gets harmed as a result of a particular policy, all right? You have to think about who benefits, who gets harmed. And ultimately, like with anything else, a lot of things comes down to judgment. Is there anyone in that process, right? In using your example, is that process the same for every entity that comes before the council, right? And we're going to say, yes, that process is the same. But one of the things that we think about too is that are there entities that come before that particular board that feel like they're not getting a fair shake? And so how do you know about that unless you have those conversations? And so thinking about who wins, or not who wins, but who's harmed and who benefits, and making sure that those benefits are distributed fairly across the board.
That's good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That's it, Chairman.
All right. Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Malden, for the work that you've done for us so far. My questions are along the same lines as Councilwoman Dotley's, because I think that I'd like to see us have a more detailed, immediately applicable tool that we could use as part of our legislative committee even, because I feel like what we have thus far are some ideas about policies that would directly impact equity, but we have a lot of other policies that we look at and legislation that we consider that is not specifically an equity policy, and yet it could be argued can have an impact potentially on equitable outcomes, right? And so, we've been having a lot of conversation about the fact that urban chickens are going to be on the council's agenda coming up. That's something that Chairman Henderson has asked our legislative committee chair to get into the works. And so, I brought a rollerblading ordinance. We worked on a short-term vacation rental ordinance. We did the towing and wrecker ordinance. And so I think we're considering some changes to city policy related to the age that people can be to become firefighters or to join the police force. Things that, many of them seem like they make a lot of sense on the front end, right?
Right.
And as we are doing our work and doing our due diligence, it would be very helpful to have some really specific things that we're looking at each time that are, that we can have continuity as we know, okay, we've considered this.
Yeah.
And so as I study the policy decision-making framework, I feel like it's still, I just need a little bit more meat
Okay.
on it if we could. The other question I did have, I want to make sure that I'm understanding the data correctly that you've provided in the summary. So across the 6 policy areas, as we know, we have significant disparities, whether it be by gender or by access to resources because of location or age or race. But it looks like to me, the way that I read this document is that when it comes to criminal justice and public safety, that as it relates to arrest rates, incarceration rates, use of force, and citizen perception of safety, that we do not have inequities. And you had said that our police force captures quite a lot of data. And so could you shine some light on that for us, please?
Yes, and so I probably should also say that this data comes from an organization called Policy Map, which collects data from all kinds of places, whether it's census data, whether it's from local governments and the like. And so when we're looking at arrest rates, incarceration rates, use of force, and citizen perception of safety, what we're looking at is how different were things across those, across the census tracts, right? When you look at it across the census block groups, when you look at it across census block groups, it doesn't seem that different. But when you start to, let's say, put it in neighborhood or put it in council district, that's when you start to see some real differences. And so this was just the census block group data that was being reported there.
Okay, so I can't really extrapolate anything from that, is what you're saying? Like, it's just census block groups, so one block group compared to another block group, we do not have a disparity. But I cannot read from this that we in Chattanooga do not have a disparity in incarceration rates related to race or gender.
When you look at it strictly across the block group, what this is saying is that there's no difference in race and gender. Now, when you break it down to, I guess, more cohesive geographic boundaries like a neighborhood, like a council district or what like, then you start to see some of those things. And also, in the community survey, I think you can capture some of that as well, because there is a question about perception of crime there.
Okay. So when will we have access to more specific information?
The full report. So part of what I wanted to do, which I was hoping, last time before I got sick, is to get this type of feedback.
Okay.
And so all of this has still been in the works, and so 2 weeks.
Okay, that's helpful to understand, like we're still in the working.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, that's all, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, because we definitely want to provide more detail.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, any other questions for Dr. Malden? Dr. Malden, thank you for coming and presenting this report.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you. All right, council, this is our second Tuesday of the month, which typically we refer to as our zoning night. Starting next month in June, we'll begin our order of business following a 30-minute recess from our agenda session. But tonight, I think since it was announced at last month's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, that it would start at 6 tonight. So At this time, we will be in recess until 6 o'clock this evening.